My name is Linda Parker. I'm 67 years old, and I never thought I would become homeless because of my own son. People often say a mother's love is endless. I believed that with all my heart. I worked hard, gave up my dreams, and spent my whole life making sure my son had everything I never had. But one cold Monday morning, he looked into my eyes and said, "Mom, you can't live here anymore." Those words broke my heart more than anything else in my life. I wish I could tell you that this story is only about pain, but it is also about love, mistakes, and the value of family. Let me tell you how everything began. When my son Ethan was only 5 years old, my husband died in a car accident. One day we were a happy family. The next day I was a widow with a little boy who kept asking when his father would come home. I had no answer. I held Ethan every night while he cried himself to sleep. Then, after he finally closed his eyes, I cried alone in the kitchen where nobody could hear me. Life became very difficult. I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I cleaned offices. At night, I worked at a small grocery store. I slept only a few hours every night, but I never complained. Every dollar I earned was for Ethan. When he wanted new school shoes, I wore my old ones another year. When he needed books for school, I stopped buying coffee before work. When he dreamed about going to college, I quietly started saving money in a small box hidden inside my closet. Sometimes I was so tired that my legs hurt. But when Ethan smiled at me and said, "You're the best mom in the world," all my pain disappeared. Those words gave me strength. Years passed quickly. Ethan became a smart and kind young man. He studied hard and earned a good job at a software company. The day he received his first paycheck, he hugged me. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." I smiled through my tears. "I've already received my reward," I told him. "Seeing you happy is enough." For a while, life felt peaceful again. Then, Ethan met Jessica. She was beautiful, confident, and always dressed perfectly. At first, I welcomed her into our family with an open heart. I cooked her favorite meals. I bought her birthday gifts. I even gave her my late mother's necklace on their wedding day. She thanked me politely, but something in her smile felt cold. I tried not to judge her. After they married, Ethan asked me to move into the small guest room in the house. "Mom," he said, "you shouldn't live alone anymore. Stay with us." I was touched by his kindness. "I don't want to be a burden," I said. "You never could be." Those words filled my heart with peace. So I sold my little house. It wasn't worth much, but it had been my home for over 30 years. Every wall held memories of Ethan growing up. I cried quietly after signing the papers. The money from the sale helped Ethan and Jessica pay off part of their mortgage. "It will make your future easier," I told them. Ethan hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Mom." I believed we would always be a family. For the first few months, everything seemed normal. Then, little things started changing. Jessica stopped inviting me to dinner. She rolled her eyes when I spoke. If I folded the towels differently, she unfolded them and did them again. If I cooked dinner, she ordered takeout instead. Whenever Ethan came home from work, she smiled at him like nothing had happened. I stayed silent. I told myself that every marriage needed time. I didn't want to cause problems between them. But silence has a price. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and heard Jessica whispering, "We need our own space, Ethan." There was a long pause. Then I heard my son's quiet voice. "I know." I froze behind the hallway wall, my heart beating so hard it almost hurt. For the first time in my life, I wondered if the home I had helped build still had a place for me. After hearing Ethan and Jessica talking that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself that I had misunderstood their conversation. Maybe they were talking about something else. Maybe I was worrying too much. A mother always wants to believe the best about her child. The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast, just as I always did. I cooked eggs, toast, and Ethan's favorite bacon. When he came downstairs, he barely looked at me. Jessica sat beside him, checking her phone. The room felt strangely quiet. I smiled and placed a plate in front of Ethan. "I hope you slept well." He nodded without meeting my eyes. "Thanks, Mom." Nobody said another word. When breakfast was over, Jessica stood up first. "I'll wait in the car," she said. As soon as the front door closed, Ethan took a deep breath. "Mom, can we talk?" My heart sank. I already knew what was coming. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had helped him with homework, the same table where we celebrated birthdays and Christmas dinners. Now it felt cold. Ethan kept rubbing his hands together. Finally, he spoke. "Jessica and I think it's time for you to move out." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "I move out?" He nodded slowly. "We're starting our own family. We need more privacy." I stared at him. "This house has 3 bedrooms." "I know." "You asked me to live here." "I know." "I sold my home because you wanted me close." His eyes filled with guilt, but he still didn't look at me. I remember. I waited for him to change his mind. I waited for him to say he was sorry. Instead, he quietly said the words that broke my heart. "You have 2 weeks." Tears filled my eyes. "Ethan, I have nowhere to go." "You'll figure something out." Figure something out. Those 4 words hurt more than a slap. I had spent my whole life figuring things out for him. Now he couldn't do the same for me. I stood up slowly and walked to my room. Not my room anymore. Just a room I was being asked to leave. I closed the door and finally cried. Not loud, just silent tears rolling down my face. I looked around at my small space. 1 bed, 1 dresser, a family photo, a few boxes of clothes. Everything I owned fit inside 1 room. For the next 2 weeks, I searched for apartments. Every place was too expensive. My savings were almost gone. Most of the money from selling my house had gone toward Ethan and Jessica's mortgage. I never asked for it back. It had been my choice. I simply believed family took care of each other. I was wrong. The last morning arrived much faster than I expected. I packed my clothes into 2 old suitcases. I carefully wrapped my late husband's picture in a towel so the glass wouldn't break. That photograph was worth more than anything else I owned. Before leaving, I walked through the house one last time. I touched the kitchen counter. I looked out the living room window. I smiled sadly at the little garden where I had planted roses with Ethan the summer before. So many memories. None of them belonged to me anymore. Ethan stood by the front door. His shoulders were heavy. "I'll help carry your bags." "No," I answered softly. "I can still carry my own burdens." He lowered his head. Jessica never came outside. She stayed inside the house, watching from the window. I pulled my 2 suitcases to the sidewalk. The front door closed behind me. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear my son call my name. I waited, just for a few seconds. Maybe he would open the door. Maybe he would run outside and hug me. Maybe he would say, "Mom, don't go." But the door never opened. I started walking. I didn't know where I was going. The bus station became my first stop because it was warm inside. I sat on a hard bench for hours, pretending I was waiting for someone. When evening came, I realized I had nowhere to sleep. I found a small homeless shelter across town. The woman at the front desk smiled kindly. "First time here?" she asked gently. I couldn't answer. I simply nodded. She handed me a clean blanket. "We'll take care of you tonight." Her kindness almost made me cry again. That night, I lay on a narrow bed surrounded by strangers. Some had lost jobs. Some had escaped abusive homes. Some had nobody left. As I stared at the ceiling, one painful thought kept returning. I wasn't homeless because of bad luck. I wasn't homeless because of illness. I wasn't homeless because of a disaster. I was homeless because the little boy I had once carried in my arms had decided there was no longer room for his mother in his heart. The homeless shelter became my home. Every morning, I folded my blanket, made my bed, and thanked the volunteers who served breakfast. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I wanted to keep my dignity. Some days were harder than others. I missed having my own kitchen. I missed watering flowers. More than anything, I missed the son I used to know. The little boy who would run into my arms after school was gone. In his place was a man I hardly recognized. One afternoon, the shelter needed extra help in the dining room. I raised my hand. "I can help." The manager smiled. "Thank you, Linda." I wiped tables, washed dishes, and served soup to the people waiting in line. For the first time in weeks, I felt useful again. As I carried a tray across the room, I heard a familiar voice. "Linda, is that really you?" I turned around. Standing in front of me was Margaret Collins. Years ago, we had worked together cleaning offices. She looked older now, but her warm smile had not changed. "Margaret?" She walked over and hugged me. "What are you doing here?" I tried to smile. "I'm volunteering." It was only half the truth. She looked at my simple clothes, the shelter badge around my neck, and the small locker key hanging from my pocket. Her smile slowly disappeared. "You live here, don't you?" I couldn't lie anymore. I lowered my head. "Yes." Tears filled her eyes. "What happened?" For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Finally, I whispered the words I had been hiding from everyone. My son asked me to leave. Margaret covered her mouth. Oh, Linda! I expected pity. Instead, she took my hands. You always took care of everyone else. Now let someone help you. I shook my head. I'll be all right. No, she said gently. You don't have to fight every battle alone. The next day, Margaret returned. She brought me a warm sweater, comfortable shoes, and a notebook. I remembered how much you loved writing, she said. Write your story. I smiled for the first time in many days. Who would want to read it? I would. Every evening after dinner, I sat in a quiet corner of the shelter. I opened the notebook and began writing. I wrote about Ethan's first steps, his first baseball game, the nights we laughed together while eating cheap frozen pizza because that was all I could afford. Then I wrote about the pain. The day I sold my house, the day he closed the front door behind me, the tears I cried where nobody could see. Writing didn't erase the hurt, but it made my heart a little lighter. One afternoon, Margaret arrived with exciting news. My church is looking for someone to help organize donations, she said. It's only part-time, but they pay. I stared at her. They would hire someone like me? They would be lucky to have you. A week later, I had the job. The pay wasn't much, but it was honest work. For the first time since losing my home, I felt hope. I worked hard every day. The pastor often thanked me for treating everyone with kindness. You make people feel welcome, he told me. His words reminded me of the woman I used to be. Slowly, I began saving money again. Not much, just a few dollars every week. But every dollar gave me confidence. One Saturday afternoon, while organizing donated clothes, I heard someone calling my name. Mom? My hands froze. I turned around. Ethan stood in the doorway. He looked tired. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept well. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he walked toward me. I've been looking for you. I folded a sweater and placed it on the shelf before answering. You found me. His voice trembled. I didn't know you were living in a shelter. I looked into his eyes. You never asked. He lowered his head. I thought you had found an apartment. I couldn't afford one. Silence filled the room. He looked around at the donated clothes, the food boxes, and the people quietly waiting for help. Only then did he truly see the life I had been living. Tears rolled down his face. I'm so sorry, Mom. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still loved him with all my heart. But another part remembered the cold morning when he told me to leave. Some wounds do not disappear just because someone says they are sorry. I took a slow breath. Ethan, I said softly, an apology is the beginning of healing. He looked at me with hope, but it doesn't erase the choices that caused the pain. He nodded, unable to speak. As I walked back to my work, I didn't know if our family could ever be whole again. But for the first time, I realized something important. I was no longer waiting for my son to save me. I was learning to save myself. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. I wasn't trying to punish him. I simply needed time. A broken heart does not heal overnight, For weeks, he left short voice messages. "Mom, I hope you're okay. I miss you. I'm sorry." Each message sounded more honest than the last. One Sunday afternoon, Margaret sat beside me after church. "Are you going to forgive him?" she asked gently. I looked down at my hands. "I don't know." "You still love him." "I always will." "Then remember," she said softly, "forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let pain control the rest of your life." Her words stayed with me. A few days later, Ethan asked if we could meet at a small park, the same park where I had pushed him on the swings when he was little. I agreed. When I arrived, he was already sitting on a bench. He looked thinner than before. The confidence he once carried was gone. As soon as he saw me, he stood up. "Thank you for coming." I sat beside him. For a few moments, we watched children laughing on the playground. Finally, Ethan spoke. "The day you left, I told myself it was only temporary." I stayed silent. "I believed you would find a place to live." He wiped tears from his face. "But then Jessica told me not to contact you." I looked at him. "You listened to her." He nodded slowly. "I was weak." His voice broke. "I chose peace in my marriage instead of doing what was right." I closed my eyes for a moment. Those words hurt because they were true. "I failed you, Mom." He reached into his pocket and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check. It was for the exact amount I had given them from the sale of my house. Every dollar. "I sold my car," he said quietly. "I wanted to repay you." I looked at the check but didn't take it. "I never wanted your money, Ethan." "I know." "I wanted my son." He began crying. "So did I." For the first time in months, I reached over and held his hand. He squeezed mine tightly, just like he did when he was a frightened little boy. "I'm getting divorced," he whispered. I looked at him with surprise. He nodded. "I blamed Jessica for everything at first." He took a deep breath. "But the truth is, she didn't force me." He looked directly into my eyes. "I made the choice." "I was the one who told you to leave." "I was the one who closed the door." I have to live with that. Hearing him accept responsibility changed something inside me. He wasn't making excuses anymore. He was finally telling the truth. Over the next several months, we slowly rebuilt our relationship. Not with big promises, but with small actions. He visited me every weekend. We shared simple meals. We talked for hours. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we cried. Trust returned one day at a time. With the money he repaid and the savings from my church job, I rented a small apartment. It wasn't large, but it was warm. It had a tiny kitchen, 2 windows filled with sunlight, and a little balcony where I placed 3 flower pots. The first flowers I planted were roses. They reminded me that beautiful things can grow after a difficult season. On the day I moved in, Ethan carried the last box upstairs. He looked around the apartment and smiled. "It feels like home." I smiled back. Home isn't about the size of the house. It's about the love inside it. He nodded with tears in his eyes. Before leaving, he stopped at the door. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Thank you for giving me a second chance." I walked over and hugged him. "I gave birth to you only once," I whispered. "But today, I believe our family has been born again." He held me tightly. Neither of us wanted to let go. That evening, after he left, I sat on my little balcony and watched the sunset. The wind was soft. The roses moved gently in the evening light. I thought about everything that had happened. I had lost my home. I had lost my trust. For a time, I had even lost hope. But I had never lost my kindness. And because I refused to let bitterness fill my heart, I found something even more valuable than the house I once owned. I found my strength. If you are lucky enough to still have parents who love you, don't wait until tomorrow to thank them. One phone call, one visit, one hug. These small acts of love may mean more than you will ever know. Because a house can always be replaced. But a mother's heart, once broken, carries the scar forever.